starting up today. Okay. Today's gonna be a weird one. As you can see, I'm not going with any shtick, not going with any the usual format. Really a somber subject, but I really want to see if anybody would jump on this, because it seems like every tragedy, especially on the anniversaries, over time, people don't necessarily forget, but of course it's like a love loss. You don't necessarily think about it as much. Doesn't mean you've forgotten it. It just means you don't think about it as much. Nor should we. No country, no group of people should ever have to live in fear, nor should they have some like backdrop in the back of their mind, of is this gonna happen again? If it does, when will it? There's a lot to unpack when we're talking about this. So, I just want to jump right in onto. If you look at the description of today in the episode, it just says 9/11 now and then. So, let's start with the then. Personally, I was a freshman in high school. I still remember getting up and half awake, half asleep, feeling when I knew I had to head out the door. Freshman year, I started very late. I started third period, which meant I started at almost 9 a.m. And so I believe around the time I was leaving, the first plane had already hit. And I think the second plane might have hit when I was on the bus. I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to do a lot more digging, because when you start your day off, you don't you never start a day off with calamity on the mind. And as soon as I got to my mother's room to pick up my lunch money for the day, the standard bag check that my mom would do, do you have this, do you have that, do you have this? And back then it was really just making sure I had my headphones and my CDs. And I used to wear cargo pants because I'd always want at least 4 to 8 CDs on me at all times. So I would buy like CD books and just rip the pages out and then keep them as like a to-go carry-on for my pocket. And that shows you how big our pockets were back then. I didn't own any pair of Jinkos or anything. I wasn't a big fan of the Jinkos. I pretty much always wore just like Dickies, and basically I dressed like a Urkel mixed with like a golfer from Seattle. That's literally how it looked. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So, today is a very weird day. It's raining a lot outside. It's not, of course, it's not a beautiful day. The sun's not shining, things like that. It's a very interesting start to a day like this. And so, as I was saying, I did my back check, and I remember getting to my school. Now, I went to Mather High School, and Mather High School was predominantly Middle Eastern. A lot of kids from Pakistan, India, um, and then tons of Assyrians. Um, I think I probably was one of the only Italian kids in that school, but I got in, and the very first thing I saw was a friend of mine. I believe his name was Amit, and Amit was from Pakistan, and I got there and I saw him on the ground and getting kicked at and getting stomped on, basically. I jumped in, broke up the fight because I used to, you know, one, I was cool with this kid, and two, I was a freshman. I didn't have that many friends yet, so I protected the ones that I did have. And seeing as the nerdy kids are usually the ones I try to talk to first because I'm just a big fan of the outcasts. And so seeing that was just insane. And then stopping that and hearing somebody say, the guy's blowing up our country and you're defending him. And I laughed, saying, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm pretty sure it was an airplane. And second of all, this is in New York, and you're beating up a kid in Chicago that's from an entirely different country. Because if you remember, the assumptions had already started. You had Dan Rather pulling out his assumptions. You had Brian Williams talking about under infrastructure. You had tons of people talking, all on different stations, and then some of them were just weird because uh, the fact that it was as if they already had an excuse planned. One guy, when Building 7 had fallen, of course, Building 7 is the trickiest thing to talk about, and this will probably be taken off this will probably be taken off air anyway, simply because I'm mentioning that building. The way that the guy had said right away, that building over there fell, but it was due to the debris and due to the the destruction. It's, for one, the building had just fallen. You don't know jack shit, and you're gonna tell me what your expert opinion is, and this guy probably works at like a hot dog stand, and it's just sad that we can never come to terms with what happened, politically and realistically. We'll never all be on the same page. We're never gonna agree to anything because we don't like to look at things that way. We simply don't. We're a country that is so confrontational yet so afraid of criticism. It's strange. Now, I said that I had predicted. Well, I didn't predict this. I assumed no one would be watching this episode because it revolves around September 11th. The point was, I wanted more people on the multi-stream and in the chat rooms to go ahead and tell us where you were. So if you remember where you were, please go ahead, jump in. As I was saying, I got into school, helped a friend out. There had to be about 6 other fights going on at that exact time. Our school was one level and it was just one. It was like a rat's maze. It was literally one floor that just made a bunch of turns everywhere. And if you ever seen Mather High School, looks a little different now, but we were always on one floor. The only second floor is the gym, and I still remember being told by my sister, hey, when you start freshman year at Mather, there's going to be some kids that'll try to sell you elevator passes. And just try to remember that the school is only on one floor, so there is no elevator. And now there is, for kids in wheelchairs. But back then, there was no elevator for anybody. And we didn't have that many kids in wheelchairs in our school. So I went to a school that had enough room for 1,700 kids and had 2,100 at the beginning of the school year. Now, this was in 2001. So during that time, during September 11th, we were an overcrowded, predominantly Middle Eastern school with very frustrated, confused, and ignorant children that are so confused to the point where they're angry because they don't know what's going on. And our school was so strange because they were refusing, because there's a television in every classroom. Every classroom has a television. But we were not allowed to watch that television. We were never allowed to actually turn on the TV to see what was going on. Now, if you were lucky, you had a cool teacher that would turn it on. I had such a teacher that literally said, this is the biggest moment in these kids' lives. They're never going to forget today. Why would I not show them what's going on in their own country? And other teachers that were keeping us away from the television and telling us we could not turn it on, or they could not turn it on. Well, if you remember 2001, we had a lot of different little gadgets, and a friend of mine had on his watch, he had a little button he could press that would turn the TV on. It was like a universal remote, and he would do this to disrupt class, piss off the teacher. But for once, we were being brats to understand. We weren't being brats. We were just going behind the teacher and doing what we needed to do so we could understand. Because none of us really knew what was going on. Half of us thought that the buildings were blown up by bombs. And I remember thinking, wait, one person's saying that there's bombs going off. I know for a fact that when I left the house, I saw a plane. And again, I didn't take it as seriously as I should because I was an immature little teenager. But I want to bring up one thing, is even a thin-brained, narrow-minded teenager going into freshman year, and school had just started about a week ago, so we don't know that many people. I think it started in late August that year, so it was a really strange time to be in school because we didn't even know each other yet, and everyone's fighting, and no one actually knows what's going on because the school refused to turn on a television to tell us that there's a plane inside one of our buildings in New York. And it was insanity because now you have just ignorant, angry kids that don't understand, and we're given no no exposure to the truth at all unless we did it ourselves, and we did. We turned on the TVs ourselves. We argued with the principal and the teachers, and the teachers were arguing with the principal, saying these kids will never forget this day. How could you tell them they can't watch it? They need to see what's going on. And especially history teachers and stuff like that, for them to push it away from us. See, we had a viewer for a second and then it was gone. Just like I said, this is such a touchy thing to talk about. And it was these type of things only happen like every 40 years, 50 years. The last big thing like this was probably, um, Pearl Harbor, but other than that, Pearl Harbor happened in the 40s. So Kennedy would have been the next one. And then 9/11 was completely blindsiding us. And with no knowledge and no ability to see what's going on, the day continued to get worse. I had a friend, I have a friend that told me that they were there that day, and when I talked to their parents, they're like, wait, no, we pulled you out that day. So a lot of people lie and say they were there, or at school, and they remember how crazy it was, and it's like, no, you weren't there. A lot of people didn't go to school. A lot of people didn't go to class, and I did. My mother was crying because when what I didn't know was that my parents had worked I knew that they worked at the Trade Center before, but I didn't realize the magnitude of pain. Yeah, I didn't realize the magnitude of the situation and the pain that my mother and father were going through, because they knew people in that building at that very moment. And later on found out those people did pass away. That these people were like uncles to me, and I didn't even know they were there in that building at the time. So again, it was amazing at the amount of confusion and the lack of information that we were being given. As teenagers, we weren't being told a damn thing. And so as the day progressed, so did our own ignorance and behavior. And it just kept growing until the point where they had to start explaining things to us. And so when we had all gotten home, I remember my mother was still crying over the people in our circle that we had lost, and my mom tried to remind me of who these people are, and then it hit me that this is real. This is really happening. This is actually happening to us. Now, that was the then. And at that time, the reason why I said that even a narrow-minded teenager on his way to school I saw the building and I saw the plane inside the building, but I knew that no building falls down because of that. So I expected that thing to burn for another 16 hours, maybe 2 days or something, which is what was supposed to happen. And looking at the physics of when you look at the aftermath and then, put in the physics of it, the only people that can say that made sense are either so naive that they're basically in denial, or they know it's bullshit and that they just won't admit it. Some just refuse, in such denial because they refuse to think about their country doing this. So like I said, that was the then. When we get to the now, we've noticed, of course, the physics don't add up. No building falls in its own footprint. That does not happen. No building has ever been hit by a plane and the building just collapses. That's not what happens. They just stay burning for a while until someone can fix it. World Trade Center 7. Come on, man. Again, when you get into the now and you understand the who, what, where, and why, I still have that why. The why still lingers because at the time we were so blindsided by it. But if you learned about Operation Northwoods, which is a declassified file from the Secret Service, and one of the reasons why Kennedy wanted the Secret Service, the CIA, disbanded. He wanted to cancel it. He wanted it destroyed because they don't have to answer to him. And when you have a leader, a commander in chief, he's supposed to be in command. And when you have another organization, forwarding operations behind your back and you don't even know what they're doing because they don't have to tell you, something's wrong there. Something's very wrong there. So when you heard George Bush and Condoleezza Rice saying things such as, we could never imagine that. Meanwhile, we found out that there were multiple drills on it. We had we had in fact envisioned that. We even had it on paper, and I believe one of them was said it was too unrealistic. And the fact that all this shit happens within that same presidency, that's, I don't believe in coincidence unless it's just like me bumping into someone on the street. I don't know. So let's go back to the then, when there was no information, no common knowledge that we could circle around, and you had reporters that were giving away information on accident that they probably shouldn't have said, which they ended up changing what they were saying. They first originally talked about the under infrastructure, and that's the only way you can pull a building down. And you know that Dan Rather probably gotten some shit for saying that, because that's exactly what happened. And I'm not going to get into the whole tinfoil hat theory thing, but it's just a matter of physics, and it's a matter of common sense. And like I said, even a teenager such as myself, a pothead who just goes to high school and is a freshman, even I knew when I left the house that plane in the building, I knew that plane should still be in there when I go back. When I go home, that fire should still be going, but the building will still be standing. Just like in Tokyo, just like in other countries. And we've had situations where that has been very clear, and we've seen it happen after 2001. It's funny, we've had a lot of revolving door viewership. I keep seeing people coming in and out. I'm sorry if this is a topic that is too touchy for you, or if it's something you just don't want to talk about, but I mean, it's the day. Today is 21. It was 21 years ago today. So yeah, I'm going to bring it up. And I thought, if I'm going to bring this up, I'm not going to wear my hat. I'm not going to wear my sunglasses. I'm going to be as open as possible, because I just find it disrespectful. And when you have so much disinformation, misinformation, and then just a lack thereof any information in the then you get to the now, where we have nothing but information that proves the opposite. And then you have a 9/11 report that was actually fewer and cost less than the report and commission that went into Bill Clinton's affair with Lewinsky. So you're telling me that the president, his love life and his affair is more important than 3 major buildings in New York City's skyline completely collapsing in their own footprint without any form of physical sense and common sense. Um, that shows right there that there was no intention to get to the truth. There was no intention to really give us any answers. And I think it's because the way we respond, the way we respond. We jump to we jump to people that had nothing, little or nothing to do with it whatsoever. Um, the fact that we can go into the whole Bin Laden thing and notice every time you saw him, he was getting younger, and I don't see how a guy in a cave is gonna buy some Just for Men and dye his beard back, because he had a very white beard in the first, very gray. There was barely any, darkness to his beard. You could tell that he was going, he's had that for a long time. And then you see the next video, he's got a black beard. And I'm like, wait, was this taken before this? Because he somehow looks different. And then the next video, you see it's even darker, and I was like, wait, does he have Benjamin Button syndrome or something? It made no sense. It made absolutely no sense. And so the idea that a cave dweller is getting younger by the day somehow had enough influence to do something that has never been done before. And that is with our abilities to take down planes that are hijacked. We had 100% success rate, and then it broke down multiple times, but only on one day. That is not a coincidence. So yesterday we were focusing on ignorance and stupidity. And the reason why I brought that up yesterday was because you have to be either ignorant or stupid to go with any official story about this. Because anyone who's been on planet Earth knows we have gravity and we have chaos, and Jeff Goldblum explains it pretty damn well in Jurassic Park, simply by dropping a little bit of water on Helen's hand. The fact that she kept her hand the same way, but it still fell two different directions, shows that we have what's called the chaos theory. And there's no possible way that a entire building that was made to take on much bigger and greater threats than one airplane crashing into the top of the building, managing to explode from the bottom, and hearing so many of these FDNY firefighters basically saying the exact opposite of what we're being told. Being told that there was no explosives, but when you listen to the men that were there at Ground Zero, that's all they heard was explosions. And when you have people saying, wait, the building got hit up there, but somehow we're being affected down here, that does not add up. If I hit the top of a Jenga, if you're playing Jenga, except all the freaking pieces are put perfectly straight, and I go ahead and, knock off the top of it, it'll either go and fall all over the place, or it will just the top of that part will be affected. Not just crumble and disintegrate altogether. That doesn't happen. There's never been an airplane accident like in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Just give me one moment, I'll be right back. right there.
She can't do
She
it.
can't open the door?
No, the lock won't go down.
Alright. And we are back. I don't know if you guys can hear me when I'm out. Sometimes I have to pause to do certain things. My point was where I left off was about the fact that nothing that I'm saying is opinion. Nothing that I'm saying is opinionated. I really wanted to avoid any kind of I wanted to avoid opinions and hearsay and things like that because you can't win with this argument, and you can't, you can't just throw in, well, this is how it is, So everything I'm saying, I'm just basing it on physics. It's just based on physics. It's not anything to do with. I'm not going to mention anything to do with George Bush's personal relationships with Saudi Arabia or the Bin Laden family. None of that Michael Moore stuff. Although it is very intriguing, and I highly recommend people watch things like Loose Change or In Plain Sight. These are pretty good documentaries. But if you are on the other side of that platform, I can understand the anger towards that. But the truth is the truth, and truth is not always fact. Ignorance and stupidity are not the same thing. Debates and arguments are not the same thing. I kept these as a starting off point and kind of like a catalyst for conversation because of the simple fact that I wanted to have an intelligent discussion about this, and so far by the viewership I can tell that nobody else does. No one wants to talk about it. Everyone's afraid to talk about it. And I think that's really sad because, it's physics. It's basic physics that nothing ever falls into its own footprint. If you shoot me in the head, I'm not going to fall into my feet. That doesn't happen. And so nothing that I've said is based on rumors or hearsay. It is just based on fact. And physics, you cannot pick out your own you can't cherry pick facts and then present your argument based on those cherry picked facts and nothing else. You should have to deal with the entirety of the problem. And so what I thought, being in a Chicago public school and being denied information on what was going on the biggest day of one of the worst days in American history, let alone of the century. This was 2,000, 3,000 people that are losing their lives, and we're not even allowed to look at a monitor that tells us anything. That says a lot right there, and that's exactly how my school reacted. I don't know how any other schools reacted, which is why I wanted to reach you guys. See if what high schools you went to. Do you remember that day? I spoke to one girl the other day, and she literally said I wasn't even born yet, and naturally I just walked away. I just can't. Never mind. You're too young for this subject. But I can honestly say at Mather High School, we were denied information. We were denied exposure, and we were denied truth, and we were denied fact. We were denied everything. And the students fought back to get that information. And that's why I love my city. The school that I was in, I was very upset with, but the students were awesome because we didn't take shit. We didn't take shit from anybody. And if you're trying to say, while in the background there's people running and screaming, and you're just saying, hey, look over there, we're not gonna do that, okay? I don't know if that's a Chicago thing or if it's an American thing or it's just a human response, but our natural response was, fuck you, I want to know what's going on. And So, like I said, without jumping into any kind of uh, without having to jump into any kind of rumored argument that's not based in any provable reality and nothing, let's just go with the tangible. And the tangible evidence is enough to, uh, if it's not enough to make you think, I don't know what will. Because you had an entire building, an entire airplane, and its black box all disintegrate. Disintegrate. Yet, a paper passport was found on the street. Again, none of this is conjecture. None of this is just third party information. This is what we were told and we were shown. So a paper passport and ID can manage to survive a plane crash. Meanwhile, in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, if you look at Shanksville and look at the hole in the ground, can you tell me anything from that original footage? Does anything even resemble an airplane to you? Because it is just a crater. It's just a smoking crater in the ground. And even the crater didn't make sense. Because if something is going to hit with that much velocity, and you got that much momentum going into it, it's going to crash, yeah, but it's also going to drag. You know? God, a paper airplane will do that, you know? And the fact that you did not see luggage, papers, clothing, people, I mean, nobody wants to see people, in pieces. Nobody wants to see that. Well, unless you're like me and you have a morbid curiosity. But when you're looking at a smoking crater in the ground, that's not proof of a plane. That's proof of something happening that we weren't there for. So, do I believe it was a plane? Hell fucking no. But, again, I don't. It's not my job to spout out opinions. I am strictly dealing with fact here. So, if you've ever seen a plane disintegrate into a smoldering crater, please send me a photo because I would love to see that. Especially if you have a video of that in motion. Because I've seen a lot of plane crashes. A lot of plane crashes. And I've never seen one disintegrate the airplane. Never. Not once. When you complain about the jet, when you try to lie and say that the jet fuel had melted the steel, okay, sure, whatever. Then how the hell did it in Shanksville, if the jet fuel can burn the steel, why were there no trees on fire? Why was there no actual fire? There was just a smoking crater in Shanksville. And then you have the Pentagon. The Pentagon, one part of the building that you had fixed up, the one part of the building that was pretty much the safest place you can crash into. That's where the plane crashed into. And what evidence do we have of a plane crashing into the Pentagon? None. We have that 3 clips of what looks like a missile or something similar. But again, let's not go into opinion. I'm just going to say for a fact that's not an airplane. It's not. If it's not a missile, it sure as hell ain't an airplane. You have the aerial experts saying there's no possible way you could have made that turn, especially the particular people that had taken over that plane. You have, oh man, Scott's gonna kill me. A friend of mine knows that, I think her name is Rebecca Roth. I'm probably wrong, but she was a flight attendant, and when she breaks down protocols and how the system works in the sky if there is a possible hijacking. She talks about exactly how you deal with that. And the holes that she poked into that over the phone conversation, the Let's Roll, the United Flight 93, the fact that she said, one, phones won't work at that altitude at that time and on that specific plane. Two, there were no stairs on that size of a plane, and you heard on the phone them mentioning a staircase. And so where would you find this said staircase? And so when you have experts like this and they're jumping in telling you no, that's not possible, I kind of take their word for it because they know. And even if you don't want to take their word for it, anything else you can look up and you can learn will not make sense. And so the day that this makes sense is the day that it should. And I think that's probably why, if you have noticed, is now the 21 years later, we still know nothing about it, because we will never get a real answer from people. Like, we'll never get a real answer from our government, let alone the fact that the people that were in New York that were willing to testify and speak on their own behalves suddenly died before they can be re-interviewed. That, to me, is not a coincidence. So again, you have to use these terms like ignorance or stupidity, naivety or a part of it, like Robert De Niro said, you're either too stupid to see it pass you or we're in on it. So coincidence and serendipity is just another part of this overall way of explaining it. There's naivety, stupidity, ignorance. There's misinformation, disinformation. There's debates. There's arguments. There's truth and there's fact, and then there's the way one sees it and the way another sees it. It's sad, and I think that's the reason why we don't get a clear documentary. 21 years later, you think you'd have a really great documentary to prove and show to us how this happened. And the fact that we still to this day don't have one speaks volumes. The fact that it cost more and they had more papers written about the President Clinton's sexual lifestyle, his sex life was granted more money and spent more money than the commission that is responsible for thousands of people that died in a flaming inferno. And the fact that these poor FDNY firefighters can't even get real health insurance. Most of them are dead, and the saddest part is, I can't even pick the saddest part. It's all just tragic, and I love what Jon Stewart did for those guys, but you shouldn't need to fight for that. These guys were there when no one else was, and they deserve the best care possible. And they shouldn't have died from exposure to fumes and exposure to all the dust and all the problems all the things that they've had to deal with. So I'm going to end this one short, 10 minutes short, simply because I can tell we're still not ready for this conversation, and I find that really, really depressing. And this was on honestly, this was my chance to see just what would happen. And if you looked at yesterday's episode compared to today's episode, there is nothing in that chat box, and it does not surprise me. I didn't think anyone would want to say anything, and I don't know. I don't know. I just find that absolutely sad. And so let's just end it. Uh, Thank you for hovering over this and then dipping out when it got too real. I appreciate the honesty of the zero viewers sticking around. Um, I I can't say that I don't blame you. I do. Um, those that keep their mouth shut and do nothing are the same. I mean, that's what's wrong with everything. Evil, the triumph of evil is when good people do nothing. And the fact that we do nothing. And this is a perfect example of it by looking into this chat box. Perfect example of it. On the 21st anniversary of 9/11, we only have one person to talk about it. I don't know. That's really depressing. Um, so go back to your, I guess you guys just go back to your streaming services, enjoy your Stranger Things or whatever the hell is so important. Um, yeah. 21 years later, and we're still not ready for this conversation. That is damn pathetic. Uh, Take care of yourselves, love your neighbors, and just try to be honest with yourselves and just love one another. If you guys are on that tip of the iceberg, then you feel like you can't take it anymore, please contact us at uselessagentmusic@gmail.com. Doesn't have to have anything to do with music. You just need someone to listen, talk to. We're always there, and